different dimension of love, which was called by the Greek Ludus. Ludus means playfulness, the ability to play. And it's very interesting because a German philosopher called Schiller, philosopher and writer and poet, he wrote an essay on aesthetic education of humankind, and he said, "You are only truly human when you play. Playing is the most human activity that exists." And it seems somehow counterintuitive because we think, like, as a human being, if you're working or so, that's serious, that's being human. But actually, playfulness is something deeply human and very important. Valuable lessons from playfulness. And I would like to start by sharing a little bit about the importance of play for children. I've been an educator most of my life, and I've studied a lot the development of the child. And I realized that actually a lot of the most important learnings that the children do, they do through playing. So when we think of learning, we think of school and homework, writing and reading and math and things like that, of course. But actually, some of the most important learnings that children do, they do through play. And I believe, and I'm deeply convinced, that we should create more space for children to play. And when I say play, I don't mean like video games. I mean playing out of fantasy. So naturally, children have a tremendous fantasy. And the first plays that you observe with little children is role plays. So the little girl pretends she's the mother and she pretends she's cooking. Maybe she will take some grass and put it in a pot and then she will feed her a doll or something like that, So it's like role playing, imitating adults in a play. And this is how children learn what one does as a human being, by looking and then imitating, but it's a play. Or children play together and they imagine a situation. Let's say we would be Indians and cowboys, or we would be robbers and policemen, and then they imagine a situation and they start playing. And this fantasy play is actually a very important part of the learning process for children. One thing that is quite disturbing is that in the big cities, children have very little opportunity to play in nature. And actually playing in nature is one of the strongest learning experience for children. Learning what nature is, like earth and water and plants and sand and trees and just playing freely with that. And of course, in the past, that was the way children were living. They were living in the countryside, and so when they didn't have to work, they were playing in nature. And now it has become very difficult for children because you live in a city like Ho Chi Minh City, there's very little parks, very little greenery, difficult to find a place for your child to play in nature. And yet, playing in nature is something where the child really learns to connect with nature. I believe that one of the reasons why we have such a difficult ecological situation is because we as human beings have lost the connection with nature. We don't understand nature. We don't have a heart connection with nature. And therefore we destroy nature, we abuse nature because we don't connect, we are not connected with it. If children from small age on develop a connection with nature, they will naturally be respectful of nature. For instance, every child, I think really without exception, loves animals. Right? Children just love animals. It's like very natural. Little cat, a little dog, whatever. Children love animals. So children have this natural relationship with other species. And through play, children can cultivate this inner richness, fantasy, and creativity. And we live in a time where creativity is one of the most important quality. We should not underestimate the impact that AI already has and will have more and more in the future. So a lot of things that now we're doing in school, learning in school, will be quite irrelevant because everyone will have access to all this information just within seconds looking at ChatGPT or whatever AI tools they're using. But the machine cannot replace everything because the machine is just processing information that already exists, while human mind has the possibility of creativity. of innovation, of inventing things that nobody had ever thought of before. And one of the forms of that manifestation is art. So artistic creation is the ability of the human mind to generate something new, different, unheard of, full of fantasy. And it's a very, very important quality. I work with the PISA surveys. So PISA is the program for international student assessment, where we are comparing educational system worldwide. And we have noticed that 15-year-old children, in average, have a much lower level of creativity than 10 years old children. So it means the longer children go to school, the lower their creativity, while we need more creativity. So, if you would say, okay, after 5 years in school, the score of reading and math in the children has decreased, everybody would be shocked. Because you go in school, you have to learn something. But the reality is, if you look at children between 10 and 15, their level of creativity has decreased. And this is a big problem. And creativity is not something that you learn in textbook. It's something that you learn through playing freely. An artist is somebody who has kept something of his childhood creativity, childhood fantasy. That's why they are artists. And this artistic quality is not something that the machine take over, because of course you can generate images with AI and so on, but they don't have the same quality what a real artist has, right? Which is really inventing something completely new. So playing is a very important part of education. And playing is something very joyful, very spontaneous. It's not a, like most of what we do in school, we have to do it. We don't really like doing it, but we have to do it because we have to pass exams, whatever. But playing is not something that you have to do. It's something that you do out of joy. And there's a dimension of love that has this quality of playfulness. Ludus, the playful nature of love. So I would like to share a lived example. When I met Lisi, who later became my wife, she was only 12 years old and I was 14, so we were kids. And when we met, it was in a way love at first sight, but not love in the romantic side, meaning because we were like 14 and 12, we were kids, but we just enjoyed playing together. We had such a fun time together. We spent a lot of time together running around and playing. And I believe that the fact that we were able later to have such a long lasting relationship is because there was this foundation of just enjoying our time together in a very innocent way. There was at that time still no romantic, no sex involved. It was just two children playing together. And this playfulness, this sort of light kind of relationship was something extremely beautiful. I still remember it with a lot of joy. This was really joyful moments. If you think back of your childhood, try to think back at moments where you had friends with whom you really could play in a very free and without any sorrows, and that creates very, very nice connections. So you observe when the children start going to kindergarten and to school, they have their friends, and they start to play together. Is a very special kind of friendship, which is a friendship rooted in playfulness. So sometimes love can become a bit serious or a bit heavy or a bit dramatic. And it's important to keep something of this lightness, this joyfulness. Because if a love relationship doesn't make you joyful, there's nothing wrong with it. Love should make you joyful. You should be happy when you're in love. You should not be sad, or it should not be dramatic. It should not be something terrible. It should be something where you enjoy it. And that's the Ludus quality of love. This joyfulness, this creativity, this fantasy. And I think it's, as I said, it's very important for children that we give them enough space to discover their creativity, their joyfulness, their spontaneity, and it's a quality that we should try to keep throughout our life. If becoming adult means only becoming serious, then our life will be quite boring. We need to keep something of this childhood spirit in ourselves. We all have an inner child, but sometimes our inner child is not allowed to manifest. We pretend it's not there. We are a serious person, we have a big title, we have a lot of responsibility, we are very successful, whatever, and there's no child in me. But it's not true. Inside of us, we all have an inner child. And it's very important to acknowledge and to cultivate and care for this inner child. because this inner child in us is still very vulnerable. Maybe is frightened, maybe is unsure, maybe it doesn't know what should happen. And so, being aware of our inner child, taking care of our inner child, acknowledging this quality of innocence and vulnerability that we still have. Even me, I'm an old man, I'm 74, but inside of this 74-year-old body, there's still a very young boy, very innocent, very naive, that is wondering, oh, what's happening? How come I became so old? I didn't see it coming. And this inner childhood quality is the root of playfulness. And if you can keep something of this quality in your relationship with others, it creates something very beautiful, very joyful, very fresh. And this, children are very fresh because they are discovering the world. They look at everything with new eyes. When we grow older, we think we know everything. I've seen it all. I've heard it all. Nothing new. And then life becomes very boring. But if we learn to look at the world, at people with fresh eyes, rediscover, then life is very interesting. And that's one of the secrets of long-lasting relationship. I've lived with my wife for more than 50 years, so I could easily think, oh, I know everything about her. There's nothing new to discover. I know everything. More than 50 years. But if I look at her like that I know everything, we could not maintain our relationship. We still need to be able to be surprised by the other. Because actually people change. But if we have a ready-made image of, oh, she's like that, I know her. He is like that, I know him. Nothing new. Then the relationship gradually will wither, will die. Our ability to look at our loved ones with fresh eyes, rediscover them every day with surprise, with awe, with joy, is the secret of lasting relationship. And this is a kind of a childlike playfulness. So it is a dimension of love that is not very often mentioned, but I think it's a very important dimension, that we keep this kind of a playfulness. For instance, every morning I bring coffee to my wife at the bed. I get up earlier than her, so I do my things. And then I make a cappuccino for her, and then I bring it to the bed, and then I sit next to her. She's drinking her coffee, and we chat. And I have a secret intention. My intention that every morning I should find a way to make her laugh. While she's drinking her coffee, I must find something to say that will make her laugh. It doesn't succeed every day, but most of the time. Sometimes I make a joke, sometimes I say something funny, sometimes I make a funny face, but I really think that, having this moment of just laughing together is something so beautiful in a relationship, because otherwise relationship after a time can become boring. I see sometimes, families sitting together in the restaurant, father, mother, a few kids, 2 kids maybe, all 4 just looking at the phone. Nobody speaking with the others. I said, oh, what kind of relationship is that? What kind of family is that? They're not speaking together. They're not laughing together. They're not looking at each other. They're looking at their phones. So that's not playfulness. Playfulness is you are interested in the other person. You're interested. You think, oh, it's so interesting what you have to say. And this gives a certain lightness, something cheerful. And that's extremely important to maintain relationships. So as children, we have that naturally. As adults, we have to cultivate it consciously. But cultivating Ludus in our relationship is an ingredient for happy, long-lasting relationships. Actually, I experienced the quality of Ludus very early on, because as I was describing, when I met the girl who later became my wife, who were kids, and we experienced it, but I didn't have a concept for that. I didn't have a name for that. We just lived it very spontaneously without knowing what it was. And then later, as I told you, I decided to study dance. Because I felt, it's interesting, it's not that I was a very artistic person. Actually, I'm more an intellectual person, like naturally. I love reading and writing, and I'm quite an intellectual person. But I realized that if I didn't cultivate this more artistic, creative quality in me, I could become quite dry, like a dry scholar or something like that. And I felt that was not good enough. I needed to develop my creativity, my artistic side, and so I that's why I decided to study dance, and I learned to play the flute. I was a drummer, and I learned to play the hand, and so I always felt that this artistic dimension is important, and also in relationship, so that relationship don't become dry and hard, but really are kept alive, and this sort of joyfulness and childlike quality. But it's actually quite late that I really, through reading Greek philosophy, that I realized, oh, there's a name for that. That's a concept. I didn't have the concept, I had the experience, but it was quite unconscious. It was like something more in an instinct or a kind of a feeling, oh, I should do that, but I didn't know exactly why. And much later, when I started reading these Greek philosophers, I realized, oh, the Greek, they had already put a name on that. They had a classification for that, that actually it is a form of love. This playfulness, joyfulness, lightness, creativity is a form of love. And I was really impressed when I read that. And I thought, yeah, that's it really confirms my experience. But I didn't know how to name it. It was just experience, but not, I didn't have a clear way to express it. And through discovering the concept of Ludus, it enabled me to formulate it more clearly, something that I'd already experienced, but that I didn't know how to explain. So that's the process, that it was not first the name and then the experience, but first the experience, and then reconfirming my experience through reading, some text about it. And I mentioned in the beginning of this session about Friedrich Schiller, the German philosopher and poet, who said, we are only truly human when we play. Because his view was that, we are determined by the laws of matter, our body, and the laws of the physics, and we can't do anything about it. It's just the law. We have to obey to the laws of physics. But he said, even in the spirit, there are some laws that you have to follow. Like, for instance, when you think, when you do math, you have to be logic. If you're not logic, it's just wrong. So you're not completely free. You have to follow order. But he says, in between, there's a realm of freedom, and that's the realm of play. And for him, being human is playing, because when you're playing, you can be free. You invent your own rules. You don't follow rules that are given from outside. You can invent your own rules when you're playing. And when you're an artist, you are free to do whatever you want. You can just make it up. And so for Schiller, the idea was that playfulness is the realm of freedom, and freedom is what is specifically human. So Ludus is a way to explore our human freedom in the realm of love. So we have discussed Ludus as the playful, joyful, light dimension of love. And I would like you to reflect on how does this playfulness affect your daily life, and if you could develop more playfulness and more joy in your relationships. First, I enjoy casual and carefree interaction with others. I often engage in flirtatious and playful interaction with others when I love someone. I see love as a fun and exciting game to be enjoyed. I maintain a light-hearted attitude towards romantic relationships. I value spontaneity and excitement in my interactions with others. I often feel most connected with others when we are joking and having fun. I don't feel the need to turn every romantic interaction into a serious relationship.